In this video, we're going to talk about the stomach. The stomach is a J-shaped pouch-like organ, about 25 to 30 centimeters in length. There's three regions to the stomach. The cardiac region, which is near the lower esophageal sphincter, or sometimes what we call the cardiac sphincter. The fundic region, which is kind of like the top of the stomach. The body, which is the main part of the stomach, and the pyloric region, which is where the stomach empties into the small intestine through the pyloric sphincter. The walls contain 3 layers of smooth muscle that help to churn and mix the food with the acid and enzymes and aid in digestion. As far as the lining of the stomach, or the mucosa, there are several different structures in what we call the rugae, or the folds. Between those rugae, or those folds, are the gastric pits, which contain the mucus cells, which produce mucus, the gastric cells, the parietal cells, and the chief cells. Pepsinogen comes from the chief cells and is the inactive form of the pepsin. Pepsin is the enzyme that breaks down protein. It takes hydrochloric acid to convert the pepsinogen into pepsin. Hydrochloric acid comes from the parietal cells. Mucus is produced from the goblet cells and the mucus glands, and it protects the lining of the stomach from the acid and the enzymes produced in the stomach. Intrinsic factor is also produced by the parietal cells, and it's required in order for us to absorb vitamin B12 from our food. There is some absorption that occurs in the stomach, even though most of it occurs later in the small intestine. Some water is absorbed from the lining of the stomach into the bloodstream. Certain salts, certain lipid-soluble drugs, and alcohol also gets absorbed by the stomach lining. As you can see in the diagrams here, when food enters the stomach, the cardiac sphincter opens and allows the food in, while the pyloric sphincter is closed to keep the food from leaving. The walls of the stomach, the 3 layers of muscle, mix the food with the acid and the enzyme to produce something called chyme. And once it's been thoroughly mixed with the acid and the enzyme, and there's been some digestion, a little bit of absorption, the pyloric sphincter is going to relax, and the food's going to move out of the stomach into the small intestine. Now, one of the main problems that can occur with the stomach are ulcers. Now, ulcers are caused when the mucus lining that protects the stomach from the acid and enzyme gets too thin. For a long time, we thought that stress and certain foods caused ulcers. And while they may play a role, what we're finding is that the main cause of ulcers is a bacterial infection caused by a bacteria called Helicobacter pylorus. Now, this bacteria, like I said, causes the lining of that mucus protective lining to become too thin, so the acid and the enzyme starts to damage the wall of the stomach. Now, sometimes you just have a sore there, and that's kind of a common ulcer. If the ulcer is left untreated, it can break through the outer lining of the stomach into the layer where the blood vessels are located, and you get what's called a bleeding ulcer. The main symptoms of a bleeding ulcer would be blood in the feces or the stool, which, because it's gone through the digestive system, doesn't look like blood, but it looks more like coffee grounds. A much more serious condition, if left untreated, that ulcer can go eat away through the whole wall of the stomach, and you have what's called a perforated ulcer, and now that acid and enzyme that was supposed to be in the stomach is out into the abdominal cavity, where it's damaging other organs and is potentially life-threatening.